So look, if you want to grow your wealth, your income, and increase the amount of time off, then these are the shortcuts that can help. Welcome to the Wealth Creation Podcast. Welcome everybody, Dan Latto speaking. Welcome to the Property Cashflow Show. Speaking to you here from the villa in Spain, which is where we live now, which is a beautiful place, as you can see. A little bit windy, so apologies if there's a little bit of noise coming through the microphone. And I've got this brolly thing just up there. I'm a little bit worried it's going to bonk me on the head. But I think it should be fine. A little bit of a breeze, so it's waving all around. Just can't get the studio these days, can you? Anyway, so in this session, I want to talk to you about Airbnb. And is this the end of Airbnb? Like, oh, wow. That's a very clickbaity headline, isn't it? So Airbnb released this morning or yesterday, they're going to drop about 25% of their, you can't see my head, there you go. They're going to drop about 25% of their staff. 1,900 people are going to lose their job at Airbnb. So that's what, 8,000 people, more or less, 7,600 in total. They're going to lose 25%. And does that mean it's the end of short-term lets and serviced accommodation, or does it just mean that the market has shifted fundamentally? And I think the market's shifted fundamentally. I've not liked the serviced accommodation route for quite some time. And that's a little bit hypocritical as well, because I actually built part of my business based on serviced accommodation. And we used to call them serviced apartments in those days, or we used to call them short-term lets. And going back about 12 years ago, 10 years ago, if you were looking for serviced accommodation in Leeds and you typed short-term lets Leeds, serviced accommodation Leeds, Airbnb didn't exist in those days, but we used to literally own the front page of Google. We had multiple websites from, I can't remember the domain names, quite frankly, short-term city lets, and we had short-term lets in Manchester and Southampton and Sheffield and Huddersfield and York and Leeds. And actually, we were doing an awful lot of money on short-term lets, and we were just kind of making it up as we went along. We had a lettings agency, and what happened was we would drive traffic to the website, and the website would get them to fill in their details, and then, you know, what the date is, what the need, whereabouts, and then we'd get on the phones, and then we go, okay, this is available, this price, this is available at that price, and so on. And we built that into a business. So whenever we had a property that was empty, and our properties didn't stay empty for long, just like it is now, to be honest with you, we tend to rent stuff out very quickly. But if we had stuff that stuck on the market a little bit, or it just come on and an opportunity to put someone up for a couple of weeks came in, then we would do that, and we would put all sorts of different people in. I remember one, it was a couple whose daughter had fallen off a car park, and off the car park top. She was messing around, she fell down, she literally broke every bone in her body. Her elbow was glued to her hip, and we were running blood through it that way. And, you know, they just dropped everything, and they came to live in Leeds for 2 months. Couldn't do hotels, they couldn't do 6-month tenancies because we didn't know how long we were going to stay, and so we needed short-term lets, and we worked very well with that. If I'm going in and out of colour, by the way, of darkness, I recognise that. It's because I'm under the brolly here. There you can go. There you can see it. So we did stuff like that. Or then the other thing was we'd have a couple with a mum and dad and 2 kids, and they didn't want to stay in a hotel. If you've ever stayed in a hotel with kids, you know how difficult that can be over a long period of time. When I come to Leeds, I normally stay in a Queen's Hotel, and we have a family room. It's just like the lounge has a sofa bed, and then there's a normal bedroom. But you can't live like that. You know, there's no freezer, there's no cooking facilities, and so they needed somewhere to stay, and so short-term lets was it again. And we, you know, back in those days, we'd get $395 a week on a 2-bed in Leeds city centre, including everything. When we look at those prices now, there's just tiny those prices when we think about it back in comparison. So the short-term let, the serviced accommodation business hasn't failed yet, but it has shifted. And over the next couple of years, those businesses that are solely on serviced accommodation, they're going to have to find a way to shift. So like there's companies in Leeds City Centre, Rooms, I think used to be one of our competitors that came up about 10 years ago. And they've got purpose-built serviced accommodation. I reckon they might have to change their business model. They might have to change it to a mixture of normal rentals and serviced accommodation. Who knows? But hotels, you know, hotels is a direct competitor to serviced accommodation and vice versa, obviously. they're going to have to change what they do as well. I wouldn't really want to be in the hotel industry. The hotel industry will need to adapt to a conference industry more than just hotels. It depends on where they are. But, let's take Benidorm as a great example. If you've got a Benidorm, how many hotels are there? There's millions of them. Okay, so they're going to have to compete. The only way you can compete on a hotel is by price, ultimately. And all the prices are going to come down. So for me, I just kind of feel Airbnb, they are going to have to adapt their business model, that's for sure. And, COVID has provided all of us with an opportunity to revise our business models. We've certainly been very busy looking at letting agents and so on. We've got another business going through, which is a £2 million business for a construction company. And so we're changing what we do too. And actually now is the time for us to start acquiring more assets while people are offloading them. And it's a good time for you to maybe consider doing that as well. I just had another conversation with a friend of mine who lives in Portugal. And he was talking about buying commercial to resi. And I was talking about that. And specifically right now, do you think there might be people who are going to struggle on their commercial units? Do you think that's going to have an effect on landlords getting paid? And do you think we're going to offload some of these properties? Yeah, absolutely. Let's just have a look. David Day said, of course it's not. Okay. I think that was in response to me saying, your next comment, by the way, sorry, I moved on. I didn't see comments. I think that was in response to me saying, is Airbnb going to go bust? And I don't think it will either. There's certainly a place for serviced accommodation. I just don't think it's in the same way that it has been. If I was creating Airbnb 10 years ago, I would have built it up and sold the damn thing. David Day's still watching. And I agree. I don't think it's the end of Airbnb, but they're going to have to adapt. And this is, I think, the key, not just for a company like Airbnb, but I think it's the key for all of us. We're all going to have to adapt. We, just from the way that we go shopping, that's going to adapt. One-way systems, and you're not allowed to pass people, and it's going to have to adapt. And your business is going to have to adapt as well. And we don't even know what that might be yet. We don't even know what industries are going to have to adapt completely. It could be, let me just move this and go for a walk, because apparently I'm getting a bit fed up of going dark all the time. So, where was I? So I'm going to walk around the pool now. If I fall in the pool, there's the pool, then you can laugh at me. It's actually nice and clean today. So we don't know how businesses are going to change. We don't know what they're going to do to adapt. And we don't know what the effect is on some businesses we've not even thought about. So take construction. Is the construction industry going to have to adapt and change? Certainly for the right now period, absolutely. Oh, there's a dragonfly there. We don't get many of those. It's quite nice, isn't it? So they're going to have to adapt. Like all businesses are going to have to adapt. And if you're not adapting in your business, that business is going to fail at some point. It's just the evolution of business. It's just, for other planets out there with aliens and they're 1,000 years ahead of us, let's just say, or chances are they're either 1,000,000 years ahead or 1,000,000 years behind. They've already gone through this, and it's just this adaptation from when you physically walk into a shop and look at clothes. New technology is going to come out. The technology that will start coming out is virtual changing rooms, where you stand in front of your mirror and the reflection is you wearing the clothing. And you think, people go, that's crazy. That's so far-fetched. So far-fetched. Look at where we are. We're sat here and we've not left the house in 50 days. How far-fetched is that? Not that far-fetched, is it? Looking at it from this point of view, not far-fetched at all. Let's have a look. So David's just saying, do not forget the vaccine will be sooner rather than later, so things are back to be normal again. Yes, I agree that a vaccine will hopefully be available. Bear in mind, it took them 30 years to get a HIV vaccine. 30 years. Just put that into context. I was reading about the vaccine a couple of days ago in one of the scientific journals, and they were like, it's not happening. It's not happening in 6 months. It might do, but no vaccine's ever been created in 6 months. But who knows what will happen? But even if a vaccine was created tomorrow, let's just pretend for 1 second a vaccine's created tomorrow. I don't want to go back to that old world. I don't want that old world where it's acceptable for homeless people to be on the streets, for the way that we just treat each other. I just don't think it's acceptable. I want the world to change. I'm hoping it's a big slap across the face for people to go, stop doing this. Let's be nice to one another. Let's sort this out. You know, I was watching in Blackpool in the UK, and someone had filmed the water was actually clear. There was no two-headed fish walking around like you normally see, but it was clear water. And there's dolphins going back into Venice canals and fish and swans, and that's beautiful. The problem is, as soon as it's lifted, the vaccine comes back, we're going to end up straight where we are. And I don't really want that. I want us to adapt. And this is like one of those moments in history. It sounds all very grandiose, doesn't it? I watched Star Wars last night, so everything's grandiose today. This is one of those moments in history where we're going to look back and go, it was that point at which things began to change. And I think some things will begin to change. I think things like homelessness, that's never going to change. Underfunding the National Health Service, that's never going to change, depending on who's in power. Current government, a perfect example. I kind of don't think some things are going to change, but we need to change. You need to change. I need to change. We need to change our business models and the way in which we run businesses and the way in which we help people and deal with people and come up with brand new solutions that never existed before. Somebody right now is building a business that's literally just started last week, and in 10 years' time or 20 years' time, like Amazon and like Apple, they will look back at them with a picture of their garage, because they're starting a garage, because apparently that's how you're supposed to do it, if you've seen that meme. And they'll go, that business started during COVID pandemic when everybody was in lockdown. There are businesses right now that are starting up, businesses that are so far-fetched that it's beyond crazy in 20 years' time. You think about how technology's changed in the last 20 years. 1999. We were on VHS video recorders, I think, and DVDs in 1999. And the whole business model has changed dramatically. Look at Amazon. Look at Netflix. Look at how things are completely shifting in the way that people are now creating their business. I need to stop flailing my arms around because I've pulled my headphone out. But they need to start looking at how we can change business and how we can adapt. So, and we did this 20 years ago, by the way, 15 years ago, when we started the lettings agency. I had my experience in computers and IT and internet, and then I had my property stuff as well. And we brought those two together. And at the time, it was Rightmove, but the individual estate agents didn't have a bloody clue. And we took so much market share in Leeds. It was off the scale. We had 35,000 unique visitors every single month to the website. Think about that. We're some shitty little letting agency, and we're driving 35,000 unique visitors every single month to our website. That's phenomenal. No wonder we closed so much business. Heck, we didn't even have this video conferencing malarkey back in those days, 15 years ago. I was just pulling up the old website yesterday, and I had a look at it, and oh my gosh, it looks like a 1990s kind of website. We've come so far in how things actually work these days. But we came in and we adapted how things worked. We took over the front page of Google because we knew how, we knew how things worked. If you were looking for a nightclub in Leeds, we came up number one back in those days. And people were like, why do you want to rank for a nightclub in Leeds? The students from Southampton or London or Manchester who are coming to Leeds, guess what they're interested in? Nightclubs in Leeds. And then they're going to stop and stay and maybe look at a flat to rent. And if we just close one a month off that, that's great. That's business that wouldn't have existed before. But this is where you need to adapt your business like we did with the estate agency, and now we're adapting how we do everything. I manage my entire portfolio here from Spain. And people go, well, how do you do that? We systemize it. The world is not 1974 anymore. We're living in a completely different world, and you need to start learning or start thinking about how you can adapt your business. And I would also suggest, and this kind of goes against the grain of most people, this is definitely me, and I'm like this because I get bored easy, but if you're just doing one thing and you're sticking on one thing, I think there's a risk inherent in that. We're not in a world now where businesses last 50 years anymore. Some do, but the majority of them don't. And people come out and buy them, or they go bust, or like right now, nobody's at work. I mean, some people are, but we want to add protection into what we do in terms of how we manage our businesses. We want to have 2 to 3 months cash flow just in case. I can tell you, by the way, that the difference and the way I ran my lettings agency going back 10 years ago is completely different to the way I would run it now. We're just taking over letting agency as it happens with a 50% ownership. But the way in which we would run it now is completely different from the way we would run it back then. Back then, we would fly by the seat of our pants and hope the rents came in. We definitely don't do that now. Now it's about building up a war chest. So if we see an opportunity, we can go out and acquire it and add it into the fold of everything else. We're changing the way in which we do business. I now manage businesses here from Spain, and all the team are not where I am. We've got a team all around the world. We've got some people here in Spain, but we've got them in Thailand and Singapore and Bulgaria. And we've got people all around the world actually implementing some of the work. We don't need people sat in an office in Leeds City Centre where we've got to pay for heat, light, rent, rates, staff, insurance, employment law. We don't have to do any of that stuff. Like some of them we do because we have people based there. But one of the ways in which we do it is to have people all around the world, and they're just contractors. They're contractors with loyalty, and we get contractors with loyalty because we pay them well. We pay them better than the average for their industry, so we keep them. But the way that business works now is going to completely change. And Airbnb is this juggernaut that's been going through, and they're slimming down. And I really suspect they'll likely slim down a bit further as well. They dropped 25%. That'll be down to 50% by the end of this year, I reckon. They can't keep going like they are. They're in business, there's two main expenses in business. The first one is property, number one. You've got to pay for somewhere to put these people. And now I think that's going to fundamentally shift when more people are working from home. And I think it was Barclays or HSBC, and they're like, why are we paying all these office bills in the square mile in London when actually people could just work very effectively from home? And then maybe we'll do extra social gatherings rather than going into the office every day. So your first really big expense in business is property, the stuff where you have to work from. And the second real big expense in business is people. You got to pay them a wage. And globalization is reducing those wages. Obviously, you're going to have specialists and people who do hands-on work like doctors, $1 million a year. But if you want that doctor, you can only get that doctor. But they're very specific, very specific professions that you can't shop around. Management, you can buy management anywhere. You want to buy management from India, you can buy it from India. You want to buy it from China or the US or Bulgaria or France. And it's like, okay, how good is the language skills? How good is the management? And what's the cost? And what's the balance between these three things? Business is going to change fundamentally after COVID. And Airbnb are learning that now. Other businesses are learning it the hard way because they're going to go bust. So I find it very interesting. But look, I hope that's useful for you. I just wanted to add my take on Airbnb and how that really relates to you on a day-to-day basis in your business. And it's obviously very related to property because it's all about property. But if you've got any questions, stick them in down below and I'll come and answer them later. David, thank you for joining in. I much appreciate that. Bye, folks. We'll speak to you on Friday. Hopefully, we might even be on time, 12 noon, for the Mindset and Hustle show, and we'll speak to you then. Have a good week. Hey, it's Dan here. Thank you for listening. Really appreciate each and every one of you. Please click like or subscribe to the entire podcast.